Hey everyone, I think this is Tuesday at 2 p.m. and this is the ROMKids Show on the Royal Ontario Museum Instagram account. Nice to see you. Hope you are well. In Toronto, it is very snowy today, so baggy shirt, being extra comfy for this really great episode we got coming your way, all about passenger pigeons. If you are as hyped as I am about birds that fly around and pigeons in general, then stick around. We got ornithologist Mark Peck with us today to talk about passenger pigeons. Really cool guy, great friend, and pal of the show. For those of you that are new to this is a kids show. We're going to do some art. We're going to talk to an ornithologist from the Royal Ontario Museum for the next 30 minutes. So if this is your type of thing, hang with us and we'll have a lot of fun. Previous episodes are all up on YouTube. Last week was so much fun. It was with archivist Charlotte Chaffee, who spoke to us about all the incredible women that helped build the ROM, but don't necessarily get a spotlight shone on them. So it was really cool to go through that. We made a lot of really cool art projects on the show. We even mummified an apple. And today we're going to try and do sort of an art project / demonstration to show just how numerous passenger pigeons were when in fact they were with us, because unfortunately now they're extinct, and we're going to talk about what that means today, again, with Mark Peck. All right, I think it's now the theme song portion of the event. Welcome to the ROMKids Show with me. We'll do some crafts and tell some stories. Let's talk about science, art, and history. Welcome to the ROMKids Show, starring you and me. There we go. Theme song portion of the event is done. And it's time to move on over to the art chair. Let's see what's going on. Very exciting. Nice to see you all here talking about passenger pigeons today. These gorgeous creatures that we used to see all over the skies in Toronto. Okay, so what do you need to do our art project today? You need 2 pieces of paper. I used cardstock, so it's a little bit thicker. You get 2 pieces of white paper. Then you're going to need a circular object to trace your circle with, okay? So whatever that might be. We used a Pyrex in this house. You can use something else, even maybe a large mug. After that, you're going to need some crayons or coloring materials. I also used a black Sharpie to do this big part where you have to do a lot of black ink. You're going to need a pair of scissors, and you're going to need either a, what's this thing called again? Hole puncher, or you're going to need some sort of I don't know, device that you can use to make some holes in your artwork, which I'll explain a little bit later on. With that said, it's time to introduce my good friend and ROM Toronto ornithologist and manager of the Shad Gallery. Also, EVC director, a great program that we get to teach in. Mark Peck, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. And I forgot to, there we go.
Hello, Kieran. It's great to be here.
Woo! This is really exciting. Mark Peck, big fan of the show, and we are so excited to have you on today to talk about birds, which you know so much about, and those passenger pigeons that are on your desk. What I want to do first, before we get to you and our conversation about passenger pigeons, is I want to do the first couple of directions for our art project, okay? So, first, what you're going to do is with your piece of paper, you're going to take your tracing device, put it on top, trace out a circle, okay? Do that twice. Essentially, you're going to need 2 pieces, 2 circles that overlap each other like this, okay? The next thing that you can do is with your first piece, I want you to cut it or draw it in half, make half of it black, and the other part of it the sky color that you're going to use. Okay, then on your other piece, and I'll reiterate these steps throughout. On your other piece, you're going to draw a scene, okay? I drew a farm. Here's my little farmhouse. Here's my tree. Here's like some farmland, okay? And then this color that I use here, whatever, that blue that I'm going to use for the sky, is the same blue I use for this, all right? We'll do the hole punchy bit a bit later on. Right now, I'm going to do some coloring. If you have any questions, throw them in the comments. if you have questions about birds, and specifically passenger pigeons, also throw them into our little group chat right there. But Mark, thanks again for being here. We are so familiar in downtown Toronto with pigeons. Like, they're everywhere. What's the deal? Are there multiple types of pigeons?
There are multiple types of pigeons. Actually, in the world itself, there are 345 different species of pigeons. So it's a hugely diverse group. Some of them are almost as big as turkeys, and others are a little bit, smaller than your hand. So there are pigeons everywhere.
I can't believe that there's a pigeon that's roughly the size of a turkey. That's so big.
Right?
And like, I'm so familiar with the pigeons that we see outside the ROM and like hanging around the hot dog vendor. And those are like sort of like that. Hello everyone. Okay, we have our first question before we dive in to passenger pigeons, but this one comes from Lauren, friend of the show. Do pigeons make good pets? The people want to know.
You know what? The funny thing is, that's why pigeons got here in the first place into Canada. So the pigeon, I'm going to show you one right here. This is called a rock pigeon. And the rock pigeons are the common pigeon that we see in the city or in urban areas or on farms. And they like being around people. And the reason they came, they're actually from Europe and Asia. The reason they came here is people brought them over as homing pigeons or pigeons that they could actually keep as pets. So the pigeons that we have in the city today started out as people's pets, and they just got very successful about getting away from the people and hanging out in the cities all by themselves.
That's fascinating. I did not know that pigeons were not indigenous to Canada and that they were brought over. That's fascinating.
We have some of our own species of pigeons, but the big pigeon, the rock pigeon that we always see, is actually from Europe.
And so I guess they probably like being around humans so much because we feed them, right?
Yep, that's exactly why they're here. They've adapted to the city. Pigeons used to nest on cliffs, and when they come to the city, they can nest on buildings and other areas like that. So it's lots of food available in the city. They do really well.
Okay. Now, I'm going to ask you another non-passenger pigeon question, just to like start off our passenger pigeon show with non-questions here. What's a homing pigeon and how do they work?
So homing pigeons are just like this one, except they've been trained by people to go out and return back to their home. And they used to be used in the war to send messages back and forth from the front. And people race them. There's called racing pigeons. People have had a love affair with pigeons for a long time. And there's even pigeons called fancy pigeons, and they've been bred to look really special, and they'll have great big fans on their tails or big fluffy feet. So yeah, pigeons have been a big part of human society for a long, long time.
That was fascinating. These are all things that I did not expect to know, like coming into this. Okay, another question about pigeons that is not a passenger pigeon question. When you showed us that rock pigeon?
Rock pigeon?
Yeah, that rock pigeon. It has those like sort of those colors. It's like purple and things like that. What do those colors?
I don't know if you can see it very well, but they're iridescent feathering, especially around the head and the neck. And it's just a way for males to display to females, and females get excited about it. And so it's used for courtship or, becoming friends.
That's interesting. Well put. I like that. Well put. Okay, getting to our actual topic, passenger pigeons. It's a fascinating but tragic story about pigeons that were so numerous and that are now extinct. So I guess my first question about this is, what does extinct mean?
So extinct in terms of a species of bird or plant or animal means essentially that animal no longer exists on this earth. So it's died off and will never come back.
So I think another bird that we know that falls into the extinct category would be the dodo bird.
Dodo birds are another extinct species. And extinction of birds and other mammals and other animals has been caused both by natural action and a lot more recently by human action.
Okay, so with that and that human action, what happened to all of these passenger pigeons? Because to be clear, there were billions of them, right?
Yeah, this is a really sad story. So the passenger pigeon was probably the most abundant or common bird in North America, and it traveled around in huge flocks. And the wonderful thing about the passenger pigeon, and here I'm going to show you one right now, it's about the same size as our rock pigeon. Passenger pigeons moved around in these huge flocks, and they were pretty good eating. So I don't know if you've ever had pigeon before, but a number of our dishes actually started out with pigeon. So people hunted passenger pigeons, and we became very good at it. And because of that, and it was easy food to get, we eventually killed all of the passenger pigeons off. And when I say a lot, or when you say a lot, think of the entire human population of the world and divide that in half. That's how many passenger pigeons were in North America. So about half the world's population of humans, and in the space of about 100 years, we caused them to go extinct.
So in like 100 years, we killed like 3 to 4 billion passenger pigeons.
That's how many there were estimated to be, 3 to 5 billion passenger pigeons.
So essentially, we got like a bunch of colonizers coming to North America and then developing a very large appetite for, I guess, these very delicious birds. I was reading that sometimes they were so numerous that they would just darken the sky.
It's true. So think of how to think about this. So when spring comes along and it's March or April, imagine you walk outside and look up in the sky and all you can see is pigeons coming into the area to feed on acorns and beech mast and various seeds in and around Toronto. So Toronto would literally be covered in pigeons.
Wow, I imagine that'd be like a lot of pigeon poo as well.
Yeah, there would be some pigeon poo as well. That could be used for fertilizer. So, there's uses for poo.
Yeah, there is. Okay, we have another question from the audience here. So homing pigeons can find their way home, and I guess that gives them their name, homing pigeon. Why are passenger pigeons called passenger pigeons?
Okay, good question. So the name passenger pigeons comes from the French passager, which actually means passing by. So because these big flocks moved in and around the country, feeding on food resources from mainly trees, that's how they would come to an area, clean out all of the food in the area, and then move on to the next spot.
That's fascinating. There you go. That's your French lesson of the day as well, if you're doing some distance learning. Okay, I have a question for you, just real quick. But see, now I've made my whole scene. I made like my scene, my farm scene. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hole punch some holes into our scene that represent that sort of dark giant mass of birds that would be our passenger pigeons. Because again, they would be so many, so numerous that they would just like go right over all of Toronto and make it very, very dark, okay? And remember as well to make your second piece, because what we're going to do is we're going to attach them in the middle using a butterfly pin, which I forgot to tell you about. And then what we'll do is we'll turn it so behind, and then you'll see it, like the flock go by. Okay, so Mark, I have a question. It sounds like how do we get to 3 billion passenger pigeons? Like there are some of them, there's the size of pigeons that you would see outside if you live in Toronto downtown, even by the museum. Like how do we get to so many?
Well, the simple reason is that passenger pigeons used to sort of overwhelm all the predators. So imagine 20 million people or 20 million birds coming into the area around Toronto, and they all set up nests. And so they only lay one or maybe two eggs at most. But if there's 20 million of them, predators can only take so many. So all the rest of them are successful, raise their young, and then move on to the next spot. And they can keep doing this year after year. And it's thought that one of the reasons why passenger pigeons were so successful is because of their great numbers. They could move into an area, not all the predators could eat all of them, they could only eat a small percentage of them, and then they could move on. So the population just reached enormous amounts.
That's if so their survival strategy was be so numerous so that there's enough of us to be eaten by the predators and we can still go along with our lives.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. And it worked every time.
And it worked every time.
Not every time.
Until we showed up and started eating them. I was reading one story where there could be a flock above you, and you could take your rifle and you can shoot it up into the sky, into that flock, and multiple birds would come just raining down on you. So just to like really, there were so many, and now they're gone. So I guess a question is when did people start realizing that they were starting to disappear?
So passenger pigeons were probably at their peak population in the 1700s, and then we started hunting in the 1800s. And by the end of that century, so in less than 100 years, we had decimated the numbers so bad that by 1898, it was very, very rare to see any population or any pigeons in the wild. And by 1914, September 1st, 1914, the last passenger pigeon, her name was Martha. She lived in the Cincinnati Zoo. Martha died, and we've never had a passenger pigeon on Earth since then.
Wow, so in the year that the ROM opened was also the very last year that a passenger pigeon existed, and it was in a zoo. And sadly, that happens with lots of animals. It also happened with the thylacine, or the Tasmanian tiger, in Australia and Tasmania, where the last one was found, the last one lived in a zoo. And what a terrible way to go.
Yeah, it really is a very sad way to go. Her husband was named George. So it was George and Martha, from George and Martha Washington fame. And George had died 10 years earlier. So Martha was by herself for the last 10 years.
That's a beautiful story, but also so sad that imagine just being the last one of your kind, and then you have to live with that for a decade. That's honestly, that's touching and really brutal. Okay, we have a question here from our audience. What other birds are pigeons related to? So all of our group of pigeons, we have 300 of them. What are they also related to?
So pigeons either are named pigeons for the bigger ones, and then the smaller ones are known as doves. This is our mourning dove, and a mourning dove is a bird that's found frequently in Toronto and Ontario. They do very well. In fact, they've done so well, ironically, that we've actually started hunting them in Ontario for food. And as you can see, there's not a lot of meat on a pigeon or on a dove either. So it takes more than one to have yourself dinner. But mourning doves, and so doves and pigeons are the closely related to each other.
So we already talked about dodo bird as an animal that, due to human involvement, also went extinct. And we were talking about.
Sorry, Karen. By the way, the dodo bird was a pigeon.
The dodo bird was a pigeon?
The dodo was a pigeon, and it was a pigeon that couldn't fly, and as a result, humans killed that one too.
Whoa! Okay, that's the fact of the day. That we're talking about passenger pigeons, and then we bring it over to the dodo bird, and the dodo bird is part of our pigeon group. That's fascinating. Okay. So, what other birds have humans made extinct? I guess.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of them in North America. We've got birds like the Carolina parakeet are now extinct. We have the ivory-billed woodpecker. There's a little songbird called the Bachman's warbler. Eskimo curlew is a type of shorebird or sandpiper. It went extinct, and all of those either went through habitat loss because of humans cutting down their habitat, or went for food. And probably one of the most famous is the great auk, which was the original penguin, if you want, and it was kind of a flightless puffin that used to live in the Atlantic. And we killed that once for food and for feathers and for oil and fat. So yeah, we've done a bad job on some of these. And at the time, people really didn't realize the dangers they were doing. And if one good thing came out of the loss of the passenger pigeon, that's when people realized that these animals were finite in number and could, be killed off unless we were more careful. So what we have done since the death of the passenger pigeon, or the extinction of the passenger pigeon, is we've introduced the Migratory Bird Convention Act, which helps protect all of our birds throughout North America.
So sometimes it's the sad story of sometimes we have to lose something for us to start caring about what else we have. We talked about some extinct ones, but are there birds that are threatened today?
Yeah, there's a number of species that are, so extinct means they're gone forever, but then there's other ways of looking at birds there's endangered birds, which are birds that are critically endangered, or that if we don't look after them, they will be extinct shortly. There's birds that are threatened and birds that are species at risk. So populations that have declined, mainly due to human involvement, and we need to do a better job to protect them, because we now know we are responsible and we do need to find ways to protect these birds.
We do. Saving our ecosystem is a really important thing. Diversity of all life is really important. Okay, so another question about passenger pigeons, or I guess not even about passenger pigeons, but what are things that we can do, maybe us at home? What can we do today to help out all these birds?
Okay, so two things, if you live in the city, that you can do really well is, first of all, don't let your cats go outside and run around. Keep your cats indoors, because cats kill a huge number of birds every year. And in the spring and fall, during our migration, turn off your lights or find ways to protect your windows so that birds don't see the reflection or think that there's sky outside and then fly into your windows and die. So those are probably the two most important things. The third thing that I should also mention is we need to protect our natural habitat better. We need more parks, we need more green spaces, not just for humans, although it's important for humans, we also need it for wildlife.
Okay, so this is a really good answer right here, because often when we talk about what can you do at home to save the environment, it's recycling and things like that, which is really important, but we also know that big industries are the biggest problem when it comes to that. But here with birds and protecting birds, we can actually do work here by keeping your cats indoors, by taking care of your windows. This is actual work that our families can do to make a measurable impact on bird populations. Okay, so that's really, really important. Okay, very quickly, Mark, before I ask a few more questions and we're done, I want to explain what I did here. Okay, so I took my two pieces. Again, I have my two pieces, my two circles. I colored my one half black and my other half blue, the same color blue as my sky, and then I made my scene. Okay, this is just a farm. Now, this is what it used to be like. We came up with this idea yesterday at 9 a.m. and I'm pretty proud of how it turned out, but I still have work to do. So, a normal day is going by on your farm. Oh, in the distance, you see a giant flock, and whoa, look at all those birds. Now, the original intent was to poke holes all through here, but as you can see when you use a hole puncher, it only goes so far, and I only realized this probably about 1 hour before the show. So another thing that you can do at home is you can use a dowel to push through here, like push through the back, like that, and that'll create a sort of similar effect, okay? Now, going back to more questions about our birds, are pigeons still bred and used in competitions?
Yes, they are. Not as much as I think they used to be, but yeah, there are still people racing pigeons. There are people breeding pigeons. It's still a very interesting hobby for a lot of people.
I think we're finding out today that pigeons are absolutely fascinating. Remember 10 minutes ago when we learned that the dodo bird is a type of pigeon? That's awesome. Okay, another word that we hear sort of thrown around, sort of sometimes a little bit more recently, is this idea of de-extinction. Can you sort of tell us what that means?
Oh, yeah, that's a really interesting one. So, when I was growing up, so when I was, 10 or 12, extinction meant forever, meaning there was no way you were ever going to bring something back that was extinct. With advances in science today, especially in molecular research, some scientists think it's possible to get the genome or all the genetic material out of the passenger pigeon and find a way to bring passenger pigeons or something very close to a passenger pigeon back to life. And it's a really interesting science question, although it's going to create a lot of problems if they're successful. How many of you would want to have 10 million passenger pigeons fly back into your backyard every spring?
Yeah. And I think too, for everyone at home, de-extinction is kind of like a cool thing. It's cool to learn this sort of thing, and maybe bringing back some animals that we've killed, like even recently, would help our ecosystems too. But that's not a reason to to get rid of them in the first place, okay? It's not a reason to let your cats go outside because we can just bring them back. First, the science isn't even there yet, okay? But second, we should preserve what we do have, because that's a lot more powerful than just, throwing them all away and then bringing them back up through like a test tube in a laboratory, okay? So it's a really cool idea, but we shouldn't like hold on to it as the only way to take care of animals, because we should really take care of the ones that we have right now. Okay, I do have a question for you. You are an ornithologist. Can you tell us, this is my final question too. Can you tell us what that is, and then how, if we want to become one, what do we have to do?
Okay, really easy. First thing you need to do is love being outdoors and love plants and animals of all kinds. An ornithologist is simply a person who studies birds. And that has been my job for a very long time. Since I was a little kid, I've loved birds and I've loved studying birds. And I was really lucky to get the job at the Royal Ontario Museum in the ornithology department. And so what I do here is I look after our bird collections. I talk about birds to people. I go out and look at birds with people. And I just fall in love every day with birds. So if you want to become an ornithologist or a scientist, you need to study, you need to go to school, and you need to find out what you love and just follow that dream, and it'll happen for you.
This is another really good one too. We had Antonia on a few weeks ago, and we talked how like we can have an interest in science, and not even have like a PhD attached to our name too. We can simply go outside and look around. And when it comes to insects, that can be with like a little glass so that you can see them nice and big. Or with birding, you can go out there with your binoculars and you can view all these things. You can record all the different types of animals that you see. So if you're young, you can go and do a lot of this really cool work by simply going outside. And there's cool apps too, like iNaturalist, that allow you to record everything.
Yeah, that's the wonderful thing about the computers today. You can actually use your computer to become a better birder and learn more about birds. So you can take your phone outside, you can get a bird field guide on your phone. There's all sorts of wonderful citizen science programs that you can put on your phone. And you can just become better and better than I will ever be as a birder just by starting early and learning all of this wonderful stuff.
Folks, this was such a fun episode, all about pigeons. It was an episode about passenger pigeons, but it really turned into an episode about pigeons. In closing, today we made this sort of demonstration about how many passenger pigeons there used to be. They would darken the sky when they'd come right over your home. Sadly, human intervention took a population that was as big as maybe 4 billion to 0 in 1914. We learned that extinction means gone, and unfortunately a lot these days, that's because of us. We learned that we can take care of our bird populations by keeping our cats inside and by putting little decals on our windows so that birds don't feel like they can just fly right through it. These are like things that we can do in our own homes and communities to take care of our local bird populations. And with that, thank you so much, Mark Peck. This was so cool. This was an awesome episode. This one, like all our others, will be up on YouTube. Just Google ROMKids Show and it's all there, okay? Google ROM at Home. It'll come up. We'll have another episode. We'll see you next week, 2 p.m. on Tuesday. Thank you, everyone. Wear a mask. We love you. Bye.
Bye.